Man of Steel screenwriter David Goyer recently defended his decision to have Superman kill General Zod in the Man of Steel movie. If you don't recall what happened in Man of Steel, basically Zod obtains the powers of a Kryptonian on Earth. He then decides to use his newly discovered heat vision power to try and murder a family in the city of Metropolis while Superman has him in a headlock. Superman tells him to stop multiple times, trying to get him to surrender. Zod says, no, never. And then Superman is then kills him and snaps his neck and leaves him to lie dead on the floor. And then he kind of screams in pain and agony of having to kill Zod. So this scene has been heavily criticized for showing Superman kill Zod. One such critic is former DC Comics writer Chuck Dixon, known for his creation of Bane, Nightfall, Birds of Prey. Obviously, he was instrumental in crafting the first Birds of Prey story, and then he wrote a character-defining Tim Drake story. In Ask Chuck Dixon, number 157, he explained why Superman should never kill. Superman is a childhood wish fulfillment character. Childhood wish fulfillment characters should never be lethal. Fred Flintstone should never murder Mr. Slate. You just don't take that step beyond. These characters were created and exist in a world where there is a strict moral code against killing. It's called the Ten Commandments, and Superman is not going to violate that. He is not a soldier. He's not a police officer. He's not endowed with the right to use lethal force. He is, for all intents and purposes, a citizen acting in the name of the rule of law, in the name of humanity. He's acting as a hero, but he's strictly a volunteer, and it's just not right to have him kill. He then stated, and you can say, well, in the real world, this isn't the real world. This should never be the real world. Superman should exist in a reality that's free of the nonsense that we have to deal with, the grubby animal-like behavior of some human beings. This is escapist entertainment. We want to go to Superman's world and be reassured that there is still goodness in the heart of humanity, as Clark Kent and Superman strive to become more human to fit in with the family of man. And in order to do that, he has got to be a paragon, and paragons don't go around murdering their bad guys. So he does say that he actually agrees with the idea of what Superman does in principle if we were living in our real world. I didn't include that here, but he does talk about that. He's just making, obviously, a specific argument based on Superman as a fictional character in the DC universe. So, obviously, heavily criticized. Chuck Dixon, one of the biggest critics of this, obviously. Goyer defended his decision to have Superman kill Zod during a recent interview with Josh Horowitz. He said, it just felt what's right for this story. And the idea that Superman doesn't kill is not canon in the comic books. It's this idea that came out later, and it just felt the whole point of it too was this is a story about him becoming Superman and understanding the port of who and what he is and what it means to the world and stumbling and grappling with this. And then having done that, deciding I have to make sure that just never happens again in any possible way. Next, he said, but I felt for that story that we were telling, and Christopher Nolan felt the same, and so did Zack Snyder. That was the right way to go, which was a much more realistic take on Superman. Goyer then recalled a scene he wrote that never made it into the film. He said, there's a scene I wrote that never made it into the movie. It was a flashback with Jonathan Kent in which Jonathan is taking Clark out hunting and they kill a deer. Clark, I think he's like 12. He hits the deer, but it's not a kill shot. And the deer is suffering, and his father has to finish the deer off. And young Clark is incredibly shaken by it. And they have this conversation about the responsibility of taking a life. And I just felt we had to cut it for time, also for budget. I've always wished that scene could have made it in the movie because I felt that was a bit of a tee up into what happens at the end. And that's kind of his conclusion, his defense of the scene. I'm actually one of the people that didn't have any issues with that scene. I thought that he clearly warned Zod multiple times. And then Zod said he wasn't going to stop, and he was pretty much forced to end his life. You can make the argument that, he could have flown up, away, done something else, done something creative. But I think in that moment, he's fighting against another super-powered Kryptonian who is just as powerful as he is. I think it would have been very difficult for him to kind of like vice grip him and throw him up there, and other than plot armor and kind of things like that. But again, if you were going for this kind of realistic portrayal, which they clearly were going with, I think that is indeed the right call. And I actually don't think there is anything wrong with that. I think that that's actually a really interesting portrayal of self-defense, and I think it's a portrayal of what it means to be a hero. I think this is something that I've been criticizing Tom King for in previous videos back in September about how he's describing Wonder Woman who has to like fight, but she's about peace. Well, that's exactly what Superman was doing here. He was protecting the life of innocent people, and in order to do that, he had to end up killing Zod. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, I think there would be an interesting story to actually look at what it means to him to kind of take that life. I guess we see those initial emotions, but we don't get to see what happens a little bit further on. They kind of ignore that, move on from that. But it could have been interesting to explore that a little bit further. But I definitely am kind of with David Goyer on this. I like Chuck Dixon a lot, obviously. I respect a lot of his opinions, but I do think I do disagree with him on this one. I'm actually with David Goyer, and I don't think there's anything wrong with Superman killing Zod in this moment. And I would not describe it as murder because he is defending those innocent people there, stopping Zod from being the one who's trying to murder them. And it is an act done in defense of the innocent. And I think that is what actually Superman truly stands for, is defending the innocent. And that is something that we as a society, I think, need to relearn what it means to defend the innocent. Something that we have definitely not done in most of my lifetime on this planet, is defend the truly innocent. And it's a shame, but it's something that we do indeed need to relearn. And I actually think that Superman movie does indeed do that. And I actually think that's one of the reasons why this is so vitriolic to a lot of people, is because they don't like that Superman is actually defending the innocent in this case. But let me know what you think. Leave a comment below.
Subscribe for more.